Alrighty, folks. If we could begin, I'm going to call to order the Silver Lakes.
Calling the meeting to order.
Jeez, thank you. My kids say I yell well, folks. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the Silver Lake Regional School Committee meeting for March 14th. It is 5:02.
I would like to call to order the June 31 meeting. It is 5:02.
I'm going to hold on calling the Plimpton School Committee to order since we're on a quorum at this point. If I have a quorum show up, I will then call my meeting to order as well.
I call to order the Kingston School Committee meeting for March 14th.
I'm calling to order the Halifax Elementary School Committee meeting on March 14th.
Okay, thank you. And we are being recorded. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is actually a really good turnout. A lot of work the last few months has gone into our budget process, and I want to thank everybody who had a hand in that. It's definitely been a lot of changes, a tremendous effort this year, and I commend everybody who's had a role in that. I would expect this to be an active meeting. We would welcome comments and questions. Having said that, I would ask anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question or make a comment to please raise their hand, give us their name and what town they are from. And before we begin the presentation, Jason Frazier is going to step through Mass General Law that guides voting a budget and the impact of not voting a budget. So with that, Jason, I would hand it over to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. The local budgets are pretty straightforward. The school committees are expected to bring forth a budget that represents the needs of the students, that they feel that the town is able to sustain and can get passing votes at town meeting. When it comes to a regional school budget, the complications increase exponentially. And this is from Chapter 71, Section 16B. And specifically, if for some event the Silver Lake Regional School budget is not approved by 2/3 of the member municipalities, then we, the Silver Lake Regional School, would have 30 days to reconsider, amend, and resubmit a budget. No later than 7 days from the date of the amended regional school budget, the towns would then have to hold a subsequent town meeting to vote on the amended budget. If that budget was not approved, this is where things get very interesting. A special district-wide meeting open to all registered voters would be held by the Silver Lake School Committee in conjunction with the select boards and board of selectmen of our three towns. A single individual would be picked by the board of selectmen and select boards of our three towns to be the moderator. And at that meeting, a majority vote of those present could pass the budget for the Silver Lake Regional Schools. Failure to pass a budget by the towns and by this school committee by July 1st would result in the Commissioner of Education taking charge of our school budget, certifying an amount sufficient for the operation of the district and other appropriation, therefore in an amount not less than 1/12 of our current total budget for the most recent fiscal year. Then we would have until December 1st to work as a school committee and as our three member towns to come up with a budget that we vote and approve ourselves. If we fail to do so by December 1st, the Department of Education would assume operation of the district and its funds and shall be deducted from local aid distributed to member towns. So us not passing a budget at the regional level has the consequences of us losing all control over our schools. So I think it's extremely important that we fight for our students, fight for our programs that we've created at all four of our school districts, but to make sure we're doing it within the means that our towns can support and what we think we can get past the town meeting come May. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That was a very good overview. Okay, going through the presentation, Business Director Sarah Hickey will take us through that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This presentation starts with the changes. So there are 4 different entities, and I'm going to walk you through the changes that have happened to all of the budgets since I saw the Silver Lake School Committee last. So since I last met with you, we had the version 3 Halifax changes. Do you want me to read through the numbers, or is this something that you've seen ahead of time?
I'm not sure that everybody in the audience has. Maybe read through them very briefly.
Will do. So the changes from the version 2 Halifax budget to the version 3 budget was removing $215,990. I'm going to do that one more time, and I'm going to be better with my numbers tonight. $215,990 from out-of-district tuitions, removed $120,934 from special education transportation, removed $609 from special ed tuitions. We allocated an additional $37,205 from the 240 grant, and then I had put in a separate line called tuition offsets, so the 240 grant and the circuit breaker tuition offsets are all in the same line. So that was between the version 2 and version 3 Halifax budget. That was a reduction of $374,738. And then, moving on from the Halifax version 3 to the Halifax version 4 budget, we found out that we were going to be awarded REAP grant funds. So Halifax will receive $40,571 in REAP grant, and there was also a retirement confirmed, and I put in an offset of $39,102 to make up for the hiring a new teacher at a lower step for the retirement. So there was an additional change of $79,673 to the Halifax budget since I saw you last and talked about Halifax. Kingston, moving from version 2 to version 3, we allocated an additional $170,944 from the 240 grant for next year to go towards tuitions. We allocated an additional $869,655 from anticipated circuit breaker in FY25 to go towards the tuitions. I created a tuition offset line in the Kingston budget as well for a total decrease of $1,040,599 in the Kingston budget. Plimpton's version 3 changes. There was again, we were notified of the REAP grant, and Plimpton uses the REAP grant to offset a kindergarten salary. So going from version 2 to version 3, we reduced the Plimpton budget by $24,217. Silver Lake budget, going from version 4 to version 5. If you recall, I had explained that in December we were rolling out a new payroll system, and my payroll clerk had COVID, and there was no time for her to put together a spreadsheet for me of what all of the salaries were. And so I went into the finance system and I pulled the salaries and was using those numbers. And 3 weeks ago, I asked the payroll clerk to redo to do a Silver Lake salary spreadsheet for me. I went through and I compared her salary spreadsheet to my salary spreadsheet. There were 32 changes, up $70,000, down $50,000, up $3,000, down $500. There were a lot of changes for a total decrease of $290,428 to the salary lines. We received information from the tech director, Steve Pello, that we've received a grant that we are going to use for hardware, tech hardware. That's $70,000. We're moving $40,000 from Silver Lake Integrated Preschool Supplies into the PK revolving account. We have allocated an additional $413,556 from the 240 grant to tuitions in transportation. I'm sorry. There was an adjustment to tuitions in transportation that added $413,556 to the budget. And then there was an insurance adjustment. For the Silver Lake School Committee members, you'll remember last week with my financial update, there was a $300,000 deficit in the insurance line. What I learned is that there are teachers and paraprofessionals, there are staff members that are being paid out of revolving accounts, they're being paid out of grants, and their benefits are paid out of the revolving accounts and the grants. So the $300,000 deficit is because I have to charge the grants and the revolving accounts for the benefits that will pay back that line in the Silver Lake budget. So that's for FY24. For FY25, all of those salaries that are moving into the insurance line give us an increase of $111,704 for a total increase to the Silver Lake budget of $124,842. So once the 4 budgets were recalculated, I went through and I redid the assessments. So the assessment is, as I have said earlier, is formulaic, that once we have a Silver Lake number, the Silver Lake number goes into the budget. There was a change that I made in addition to the Silver Lake budget in this calculation. It was pointed out to me that I had subtracted the transportation reimbursement from the state in 2 different places, and it was $778,550, and I had to put that back in. So there was an increase to the Silver Lake budget based on the version 5 changes, and there's an increase in the assessment based on the fact that I'm not taking the same revenue out twice, and I apologize about that. So the updated assessments have Halifax paying looking up at the screen, $9,119,796.55. Kingston would be paying $17,627,596.92. Plimpton, $3,469,298.63, for a total of $30,216,692.10. This would be a 51.2% increase over FY23. This is an update of the elementary budgets based on the versions of the most recent versions of the elementary budgets. So in FY25, Halifax would pay $7,456,423.43. Kingston would pay $14,962,392.50. Plimpton would pay $4,087,995.99 for a total of $26,506,811.92. This represents an 11.7% decrease over what the towns paid in FY24. And if you recall, I thought this was a very important number. This is the total cost of education. So in the Halifax line for total cost of education is the town budget for Halifax Elementary School plus the town's assessment, the Kingston budget, and the Kingston assessment is in that Kingston line, and the Plimpton budget and the Plimpton assessment. So it gives the total cost of education to Halifax as $16,576,219.98. Kingston would be $32,589,989.42. Plimpton would be $7,557,294.62 for a total of $56,723,504.02. And this is a 13.5% increase on FY25 from FY24. So the natural question is, why is there an increase in the total cost of education? So what I've done on the next group of slides is I took all 4 budgets for all 4 entities and put them together on one spreadsheet, and then divided them up according to how the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education categorizes expenditures for school districts. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education gives us what is called the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts breaks up all expenses into 9 different categories. At the end of the year, well, at the end of the fiscal year, the school business manager in every school district fills out what's called an end-of-year report and reports all of the expenditures to the Department of Education in all of these categories. The administration line, the one we call them the 1000s, the instruction line, the 2000s and the 9000s programs with other schools, when those are reported to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, those are divided up into regular education expenses and special education expenses. So I have divided them up that way for you in this presentation. And again, keep in mind that this is aggregate. So this is the Halifax plus the Plimpton plus the Kingston plus the Silver Lake budget. The 1000 category is administration. That is made up of costs for the school committee, superintendent's office, the business office, human resources, district-wide administrative technology. That's the computer programs that we use for running the business office, our student information system. It also includes legal services. The regular education portion of the administration line had an 8% increase of $165,761.49. This increase is largely due to me increasing the legal lines for all 4 budgets, because we're currently over our retainer with Stone and Chandler Miller. We were over the retainer in October. And if you look at the FY23 expenditure and where we are now for FY24, it makes sense to increase the legal lines. In special education, there's an 11%, so special education administration, there is an 11% increase of $60,195.94. You'll see on the bar on the right-hand side, there's an orange segment. So currently in FY24, we have a special education clerk who's being paid out of the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act grant. We refer to that as the 240 grant. That clerk is being moved into the shared cost budget in FY25. So I've put that on there so you can see that this is a big portion of the increase. If we were to remove that salary, which is approximately $47,000, this would only be a 2% increase from year to year. Question, Gordon?
Does the grant go away?
The grant, does not go away. We have allocated the grant funds next year to pay towards tuitions.
Okay.
The next category for the Department of Education with their chart of accounts is the 2000s. This is the aggregate instruction line. This is, if you're a school business manager, the spreadsheet for the 2000 lines is broken out line by line. They want to know how much we spend on, in every single entity on every single budget line. This includes salaries for administrators, teachers, and support, our substitutes, money spent on professional development, sending staff out for professional development, bringing consultants in for professional development. It is money spent on instructional materials, equipment costing less than $5,000, and technology. It's money spent on supplies and guidance, counseling, and testing. Again, this category is broken up into regular education and special education. The regular education instruction line has a 5% increase of $1,427,234.42.
Sarah?
Good.
Yes.
So of that, probably what, say, the 3% would be scheduled negotiated raises, and then what's the rest? Is this inclusive of things like health insurance, or is that not counted as part of
That
that?
is not in this line. And I'm glad that you asked that question about the 3% of the raises, because this is important for everybody to understand that if the teachers negotiate a contract and they receive a 3% raise, a teacher that's earning a certain amount of money, let's say master's step 3, moves to master's step 4, and the master's step 3 is getting a 3% on that amount. The
So
master's step 4 is getting a 3% on that amount. But the teacher moving from step 3 to step 4 with a 3% increase sees maybe even a 6% increase in their salary.
Okay.
So I know we settled contracts for 3% increases, but it's never going to show up as just 3% because teachers move what we call steps, which is years of service, and lanes, which is their education level.
And we would have additional headcount in here as well, so like, I think we made a handful or 1 or 2 hires in like administration and things like that, is that?
Administration would go in the administration line.
In the administration line?
So,
Okay. I thought the previous slide said that administrators were in here.
I'm sorry. This would include principals and assistant principals,
Okay,
yes.
all right, makes sense. Okay.
So again, this category is broken out by regular education and special education. And again, this is an aggregate amount of Halifax, Kingston, Plimpton, and Silver Lake. When we look at the special ed instruction lines, there is a 91% increase of $4,616,456.80 from FY24 to FY25. If you look at the bar on the right-hand side, you'll notice that I have that divided up into 3 sections. There's an orange section, which is grants. That is the IDEA grant that we are transitioning to use for tuitions next year. So that orange section is teachers and staff members that in FY24 were paid out of this 240 grant, and next year they will be in the regular operating budget. The blue section I've labeled as revolving. I think that's the more confusing of the things to talk about. The practice in the past has been to set aside money in the out-of-district tuition line to pay for, we've been talking about them as in-district tuitions, but it's important to remember that we're not a fully regionalized school district, and so those revolving accounts were how a student from Halifax would attend technically an out-of-district for Halifax program in Kingston. So the money was being budgeted in tuition lines, put into revolving accounts, and then the staffs in those programs were being paid out of a revolving account. So a student from Halifax could attend a program in Kingston. The tuition money from Halifax would go into a revolving account. The Kingston teacher, who was actually a Silver Lake staff member, would then be paid out of the revolving account. And question?
Yes. So your explanation of that revolving section of the graph means that an equal amount of dollars came out of the local school committee's budgets to equal that gray portion of the graph.
Yes.
Okay. My second question is, for the grants, which you're about to talk, the 240 grants, which is income to the district, why is it being shown as an expense?
Because those are the staff members that are an expense because they were being paid out of the 240 grant, but now they're going to be in the operating budget.
Okay, so in actuality, what you're showing is just costs of staffing.
Yes,
They are no longer being paid from revolving.
correct.
And they're no longer being paid for from grants.
Yes,
But we still get just as much, if not more, in grants in FY25 than we did in FY24. So both of those portions of the graph are slightly misleading to me, just the way I interpreted looking at it until I got your explanation, because those are funds that just move buckets. So they're
Yes.
not actual increases to the overall cost of education for our three communities.
correct.
It should be net zero.
And that
With
will
a year
come
to
up,
year.
that will come up later on.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because seeing it here, it looks like grants are costing me money.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
What I was trying to do with this slide was not have somebody see a 91% increase in special education staff and have a heart attack. There's a reason for the 91% increase. The 91% increase is because we are moving staff members from a grant, which was in the moving from a revolving account, which was in the tuition line, into the grant. Question, Jeannie?
Can I just clarify that my question to you last week as to why we were not seeing the massive decrease from the payroll and Silver Lake? This is the answer to that, because this is where those staff members were. They were coming out of this revolving account, not out of payroll.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Gordon, and then Jason?
Okay, so setting aside the revolving and the grants, assuming that those net out close to zero, we still appear to be at 6.1 million for special ed as opposed to 4.5 million for this past year, making a difference of 1.6 or something like that $1 million in terms of cost, which would be, I don't know, what is that, a 30% increase?
16%.
16? Okay.
So thank you for asking the question that I anticipated was going to be asked. So the FY25 instruction includes $953,927 in salaries formerly charged to grants and $2,540,259 in salaries formerly charged to revolving accounts. If you subtract those out of the FY25 budget, there would be a 16% increase of $827,246. So that's the jump in the yellow part of the graph from 24 to 25. And so,
Okay.
getting prepared for this meeting, I went through, the HR department has a new staff.
Sarah, I'm sorry, I think there's one more question.
On the previous slide.
You sure?
Yep.
So the HR department keeps a staff change log. I went through the staff change log for FY24, the current year that we're in, and positions that are being paid out of the positions that are being paid in FY24 that were not part of the FY24 budget are as listed there. 1.5 teachers at Halifax Elementary, 2 paraprofessionals at Halifax Elementary, 4 paraprofessionals at Kingston Elementary, 2 paraprofessionals at the middle school, 1 paraprofessional at the high school, 1.2 teachers at the preschool principal. We had to look up when the vote was to have a preschool principal. It was well after budgets were approved. And there's 1 paraprofessional at the pre-K also. So these positions are approximately $470,000. If you subtract them out of the previous slide, if you subtract them out, you're now looking at about an 8% increase, not a 16% increase.
So that's net new headcount, to be clear. Okay.
Gordon?
Coordinators at Halifax. The cost on the previous slide, actual costs that you're comparing, or actual to budget, or budget to budget?
Which slide? This
The previous slide.
previous slide. Could you repeat your question, please?
Is FY24 the budgeted number that you used?
Yes.
Or is that the actual budget with those positions included?
That is the budgeted number.
So then the difference shouldn't be as bad between the two. Okay. Okay.
I kind of see where Gordon's coming from.
Right.
Because we're not having to go back to 3 towns to ask for additional funds for any of our local districts, are we? Are we asking for additional funds for FY24?
To be absolutely honest with you, I have been spending all day, every day, working on this FY25 budget.
I understand.
And starting Monday, I, fingers crossed, put FY24 under the microscope to see if we have enough money to make it through the year, yes.
So one of the things that we've done, since these additions are in special education, you'll notice in your packet tonight there is a special education comparison spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, you will see the amounts and what we anticipate will be remaining in circuit breaker after we apply circuit breaker on that cover sheet. There is, as you know, Plimpton will have a deficit. We anticipate a deficit, but we have frozen the budget. So that's the one area that we believe may not be covered with circuit breaker.
So we don't anticipate having to go back to the town of Plimpton to cover the FY24 remaining year budget.
Sarah will have a better idea and a cleaner estimate.
The point being is, this is the second year in a row that I and my local school committee have had a fiscal deficit during the operational year. And we did manage last year to backfill. And then my town adjusted to where we thought we were supposed to be to cover our bills for this year. And now we have the same situation happening again this year for about $216,000. We applied for extraordinary relief and reserve relief of 25 grand. It's something, I appreciate it. If we can't cover it from within the lines in Plimpton, or at Halifax Elementary, the only alternative is to file for special town meeting and to try and get, I have not even considered that conversation because at this point, I don't have enough information from my administration to have that conversation with my town. I've alerted them to the possibility. But when you say we have all these additions and I'm not seeing major holes and like a desperate cry to go back to the towns, it seems like we did have enough in our budgets last year to meet these obligations for these additional staff members.
So to answer that, I'm only one person, and I can either put together an FY20, like there's things that I have on my things to do list that I'm embarrassed about. It must be done, and I just haven't had time.
And if I may, we have made significant changes. As you notice, we have 2 new people sitting at this table. And we have also made numerous changes to the budget this year, unprecedented changes of ways that this was done incorrectly for decades. And we have a group of people here who have worked tirelessly to make sure that we've dotted every I and crossed every T to get you this information as quickly as possible.
May I just add, Jason? So Kingston last year, we had a substantial deficit to the budget where we did have to go back at town meeting and we had to ask for free cash. We applied circuit breaker funding and we dissolved our stabilization account of over $200,000. It was a substantial deficit last year. And this year, I know that we're operating in a deficit. We're expecting some circuit breaker funds to offset that, but that would add to this increase that you're seeing from 24 to 25. Because we are currently, is it about 600,000 for this year? But I know that, it's about 600,000 for Kingston. And the areas that we're seeing these deficits come to is out of district transportation and special education costs. All areas that we have no control over. So unfortunately, we're just being hit with a hammer. So, but it's not sustainable.
So budgeting for special education this year, I did not use a budget from last year and say, gee, I'm going to be increasing. I used actuals. So I took the actual cost that we're spending and I applied the 5% to it. So if you look at it, if we're looking at fiscal year 24, that's the budget. That's not the actual of what you spent in 24. So I didn't want to do that because you would always end up short because we have a lot of accounts that are over. So I took the actual costs, then added my 5% to it. So what you may be seeing in the additional costs in special education is the overages, or perhaps maybe even the underspending in special education on certain accounts, actual from fiscal year 24, plus 5%.
And I appreciate that strategy in creating those numbers.
Okay, move on. So the next category from the Department of Education is student services. Student services encompasses health services, which is nurses, student activities, food service, any food service that's not paid out of a food service revolving account. It encompasses any athletics that are not paid out of an athletic revolving account, school security, and that's where our first student buses are charged. The 3,000 accounts, again, aggregate, all four towns, all four entities, Halifax, Kingston, Clinton, and Silver Lake. The aggregate is a 7% increase of $230,940.23. The 4,000, so the 3,000 accounts and the 4,000 accounts are only reported to the Department of Education as a whole, so these aren't split out, regular ed and special ed. The 4,000 accounts are operations and maintenance. That includes utilities, which is computer networking, telephone, electric, gas, water, sewer, and trash. Any maintenance and custodial salaries, maintenance of building and grounds, custodial supplies and equipment, maintenance supplies and equipment, and technology infrastructure. There is a 7% increase in the 4,000 accounts of $433,995.11. The 5,000 accounts are the benefits and fixed charges. These are employer retirement contributions, employee separation costs, insurance for active and retired employees. This also includes the rental or lease of equipment, sick leave buyback, and other fixed charges. So there is a 10% increase of $474,750.31 in this category. There was a 4% increase on health insurance. We had an increase on the number of people that will be getting the health insurance. Those are the people moving from grants and revolving accounts into the operating budget. And then there was a 10% increase on our other insurance carriers, on liability, etc.
Are any of those services negotiable? That 10% increase there?
We currently go with Maya, I can't for the life of me right now remember what it stands for, Massachusetts something, it's a kind of a municipal insurance company. We could go out to bid on our insurance, but I couldn't get that done within.
Right, understood. 10% is just a steep increase. Thank you.
I included the 6,000 accounts in here only so that nobody would say to me, hey, you've got 6,000, but 6,000 accounts are for community service, which is when schools pay for civic activities or recreation services or services to non-public schools. There are very few schools in Massachusetts that use this category, and it's not used by Silver Lake or Union 31. The 7,000 accounts are for the acquisition, improvement, and replacement of fixed assets. So when you think fixed assets, large purchases over $5,000 that are going to last 10 years or more. So this would be replacing a boiler or new windows or doors. Also, purchase of land and buildings, equipment replacement, capital technology, things like networking switches, things like that, or purchasing motor vehicles. The acquisition, improvement, and replacement of fixed assets lines have a 44% decrease of $46,854.07 from FY24 to FY25, and basically they bought some mowers and I think a golf cart last year, and we don't need another mower and golf cart. Or, I'm not sure about the golf cart. I know for a fact we bought a mower. The 8,000 accounts are for debt retirement and service, and Silver Lake Regional School District and Superintendency Union 31 doesn't have any allocation for this in FY24 or FY25 budgets. In Silver Lake, our debt is handled outside of the operating budget, and you'll see that as part of the assessment process. The 9,000 accounts, again, this is aggregate, all four entities. 9,000 accounts are divided up by regular education and special education. Our regular education 9,000 accounts are for the out-of-district vocational educational tuitions and transportation. That is students that attend Bristol Agricultural High School, Norfolk Agricultural High School, and we've received some information this year of students that want to attend South Shore Regional Vocational Technical High School to study programs that aren't offered here within Silver Lake Regional High School. So the regular education, the out-of-district vocational tuition and transportation has a 21% increase of $86,300. So currently we have one student in Plimpton, one student in Halifax, and 5 students in Kingston that attend out-of-district vocational programs. We currently have 5 applications for out-of-district vocational programs, and the students and families have until April 1st to make a commitment to attending or not attending those schools they've applied to. Again, the 9,000s are broken out to regular education and special education. The 9,000 aggregate special ed tuition and transportation line has a 0% decrease. That's how the numbers work out, of $9,357.56. I put the blue section on the bar on the left-hand side because I wanted to remind you that in the FY24 budget, there was money in the tuition line that went into revolving accounts that paid staff salaries, and that blue section in FY24 is part of the instruction line now in FY25. So that blue portion of the FY24 budget is $2,540,259,094 in salaries for revolving accounts, and we moved that to instruction. If you subtract that amount out, there would be a 50% increase in special ed tuitions and transportation, comparing just the yellow piece of the bar on the left to the yellow bar on the right. I worked closely with the special ed department to put together a year-to-year comparison chart for special education costs. In analyzing that spreadsheet, there was $980,720.18 in additional costs during FY24. So that is tuition and transportation for Halifax, Kingston, and Plimpton. Tuition totaling $766,700.23. Transportation totaling $213,999.95. So this is what's happening currently in FY24 that was not budgeted for. That's part of the increase in the yellow bar from FY24 to FY25. And we are using circuit breaker, FY24 circuit breaker, to cover this increase as best as possible. In comparing the budgeted FY24 9,000 accounts to the current years-to-date spending of the 9,000 accounts to what's projected for FY25, there is an increase in all four entities, plus an increase of extended school year, which was formerly paid out of a revolving account. There's a total increase of tuitions of $1,113,962, a total increase in transportation of $546,288.50. And I want to be clear that a student that we knew about that was budgeted for in FY24 that we're currently paying for in FY24 and expect to provide services for FY25 is not part of this number. So this previous slide is students that weren't in the budget in FY24 that we're currently paying for, that we're hoping to cover the costs with circuit breaker allocations. And this is all of the students that will be receiving tuition and transportation services in FY25 that aren't currently receiving services in FY24 or budgeted FY24. So if we go back to this slide here and we look at the increase of the yellow from FY24 to FY25, and it's a 50% increase, these two slides here is about $2.5 million of your increase. So this segment of the presentation, and I apologize, it's a long presentation. This segment of the presentation started with, what's going on, where's the increase? So there's a total increase in all four budgets of $7,439,422.74, and it is in all it's in all of these categories that I have just gone through with you piece by piece. And again, you have the actual line item budgets in your school committee pack, in the school committee folder. So I just want to take a moment to see if there are any questions on this part of the presentation.
So the aggregate at the top is 7.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
But on the total cost of education, you're showing $6.7 million overall increase for the three towns?
Because thankfully we have revenue.
Okay.
So the revenue has been, so the overall budget has a 7.4 million increase, but use of revenue has allowed us to not make it that bad, if that sounds right.
No, I appreciate the
That makes sense.
clarification between the difference in the two numbers.
I still feel like we've got to pull apart the 6 million in instruction in a really simple way. So 1.5 million of it was salary increases and head counts and things like that. Is that right?
You're asking great questions tonight, and I think future slides are going to help answer these questions.
Okay, should I hold off then, or, because
If you could.
okay.
Can I ask a question then also, Sarah, of how the presentation's going to come out? Are we going to get back to that slide at the end of the total increases,
We can
the
go
total
back
cost
to
of
that if you'd
education?
like.
Okay, thank you.
Slide 31, Gordon's question.
I'm sorry?
For Gordon's question, I think if you go to slide 31, the instruction line increasing.
Am I going back? I don't
Yes,
have-
please. This slide, so it's simple, and I think that you just pass it. Forward. Two more. Don't keep going. This one. So there'll be more detail, Gordon, but the one part of, basically the blue part of that, when staff was moved to the instruction line, it came out of the revolving grants, that pushed up the instruction line. So part of the reason that we'll see in the future is that those positions are now in the operating budget. And so when we're on the slide and you see the 6 million, a simple preview for that is that that those positions were moved out of the blue and into the operating budget, in addition to the increase that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that, though, is that there were revenues in those revolving accounts that were paying for that.
So let me be clear about the revenues. Those revenues were tuitions. So money was put in the Halifax budget, in the Plimpton budget, and the Kingston budget in the tuition line.
Yeah.
And then the money going into the revolving accounts were being billed to the tuition lines.
Right.
So it wasn't really revenue.
Yeah,
It was moving.
but the movement of them should not have increased the cost $6 million or something, or $4 million or whatever it was. All it did was move it from one ledger to another. So like the total cost of education should not have gone up because that was included in the total cost of education all along.
Agreed.
So that's why I really want to decompose that $6 million, because it could be just me misunderstanding it, but when we were pulling apart, I mean, we showed $4 million in special ed or whatever it was, but immediately discounted, 3/4 of that as being, offset through, really just kind of the accounting of how we've been doing it. So I want to get to what are the actual net expense increases.
Paul, Gordon, I think what you're going to find is when you go through the net increases to the special needs out of district cost, you will see that you are serving more students now, a lot more students than you served before. And it just so happens that the money lines up, and I have been staring at this for 60 hours a week for the last 2 weeks, each week.
And thank you for that.
In questioning these numbers as much as I can. Sarah can tell you I had multiple conversations with her, Paula, and Jill. I didn't want to believe these numbers either. And it really wasn't until last night when I stepped through each particular spot that they put into the spreadsheet that I said, oh my God, there's an additional 30 students or 30 items that they've added after they've taken away all the revolving accounts and put them into the elementary and Silver Lake. I didn't want to believe it. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, when I emailed.
I'm sorry, John.
John Wilkinson, Plimpton. So can I say it a slightly different way just to see if I'm getting this in my head? So if we look at the 9,000 lines, we have 2.5 million that was revolving, that's moved out of that into the 2,000 lines, and so 2.5 million of the 4.6 is that.
Yes.
And what being hidden on that sheet is that there's 2.5 million of additional out-of-district tuition expense for students. For the new year, there's a $2.5 million increase.
There's more that goes into this particular category than just the out-of-district tuitions and transportation. There are other expenses in there, such as the in-district private transportation and other things that go into this category.
But we have net new services costing us 2.5 million in
Yes.
fiscal year '25.
Not all are gonna be
So
there.
so the blue should have kind of not be there to explain this section. I understand, Sarah, what you're doing, and it's helpful, but I think there isn't a 0% decrease realistically in 9,000. There's a $2.5 million increase. So then we go back to the 2,000 lines where we have 4.6. You have 2.5 of it, that's that movement over. You have about 500,000, which from one of the other slides is net new staff. So I think the question that sits in my head is what's the extra 1.6 for? So that may be answered later in the slides, but that would be the open question in trying to understand this number. And I, like Gordon, am not liking what I'm thinking because some of this now actually makes sense, but I still don't understand what the 1.6 additional there, I don't understand where that comes in to creating a 91% increase.
Sorry.
I don't know if now is a good time to mention the way that I kind of came to understand some of these changes, because I know that we're looking at an aggregate slideshow right now, but one of the things that I know Kingston's trying to reason is why we're paying such an increased cost overall. And not only has the structuring changed, but the formula's changed, because previously, and I think Dr. Prue might be able to talk to this, we were charging 100% of special education costs for pre-K and then 7 through 12 students to age 22. 100% of those costs were charged to their town. So none of those costs were included in the Silver Lake budget. And now, DESE has informed us that we cannot charge those tuitions for 7 through 22 years of age. 100%, it has to be charged as an assessment. So using a 60-30-10, which isn't exact figures, but Kingston at 60% assessment and Plimpton at 10% and Halifax at 30%, Kingston is now paying 60% of the entire district's 7 through 12 and preschool tuitions. And Halifax is paying 30% of the entire region, excuse me, not town, special education services, and Plimpton is paying 10%. So not only have these tuitions gone up and the transportation gone up, but the assessments to the town has increased because the formula has changed for the 7 through 12, 7 through 22, and the preschool. So I think Jason is sitting on a presentation about the preschool. Halifax alone has saved slightly in the preschool tuition line item, but Kingston is now offset almost $500,000, and Plimpton is now, overall, their budget is paying for like an additional 2 out-of-district placements because of the change in the formula to special education. So it's never going to be apples to apples, orange to orange, because we're looking at 4 separate budgets, technically, I think 7 separate budgets, but we're not going to be able to see those numbers. So I appreciate the way that Sarah's broken this down with this is where the money came from, but it doesn't, I don't know if we're going to be able to answer the increases unless we're looking at exactly what they are. So whether it's transportation, the curriculum, et cetera. But I think that's the change to the overall.
Paula, thank you. Tim Lewis, Kingston. Maybe it's more appropriate that I save this question, but are we going to go back to the total cost to educate for all 4 towns or all 4 communities?
We can, yes.
Okay, I'll wait then. Thank you.
Any other question on this part? So the next thing I wanted to do, so we looked at everything in the aggregate of all 4 entities, everything added together and then split up by, literally by the budget line function codes. So the next thing I wanted to do is talk about what's going on in each town. And I'm going to apologize for my goofy graphics. So the FY24 budgets were made up of 4 parts. There was out-of-district vocational that was paid by the individual towns. There was regular education and special education that happens in the brick and mortar of the building. And then there was out-of-district special education. And the out-of-district special education is students that are K through 6, students that are pre-K and 7 to 12 plus, and then there were what I'm going to refer to as Silver Lake staff revolving programs. And it's important to remember that because we're not a fully regionalized district, that it is appropriate to put tuitions that are being paid to Kingston from Plimpton in an out-of-district tuition line, and it's not an in-district cost. It is an out-of-district cost. The changes that we were asked to make for FY25 changes what this picture looks like, that the out-of-district vocational is still being paid for by the towns. There is still regular education and special education, which is going to happen within the walls of the buildings of your schools. And then there is out-of-district special education, tuition and transportation, and the K through 6 is being charged to the towns, and pre-K and 7 to 12 plus is being charged, it is part of the Silver Lake budget. And I want to be clear here that when I say PK, that's not the Silver Lake Integrated Preschool over there on the right-hand side. That's 3- and 4-year-olds that are in a out-of-district placement that can't attend the integrated preschool. So those tuitions, plus any 7 through 12 tuitions, belong to Silver Lake. So then, I'm sorry the numbers aren't easy to see. So if we look, this is Halifax, if we look at FY24, this is that same, you have your out-of-district vocational on the left-hand side. Within the brick and mortar of the building is your regular ed and special ed. There's out-of-district special ed, and then Silver Lake staff revolving programs. The number for the Silver Lake staff revolving programs, I'm going to apologize, is an estimate based on the FY25 salaries of the staffs that were moving. The way the FY24 budget was designed, it would take an extraordinary amount of time to get you the actual number that goes in that box over on the right-hand side. So in FY24, Halifax had $156,500 budgeted for out-of-district vocational. Within the school of Halifax Elementary School, there was $5,225,699.95 budgeted for regular education, $1,134,145.72 for special education. The out-of-district special education costs $2,179,394.62. Again, keep in mind that this number in FY24 is pre-K up to age 22. And then over on the right-hand side, I have $580,411.38. That is, those were Silver Lake staff working at Halifax Elementary School or that was Silver Lake staff working in Kingston Elementary School, or one of the schools where Halifax was paying a tuition for a student at Silver Lake Regional High School, or paying a tuition for a student at Silver Lake Regional Middle School, or in Kingston. If you take a look at FY25, Halifax is pared down. We still have out-of-district vocational. The out-of-district vocational is budgeted at $156,500 for FY25. We still have the regular ed and special ed that's going on within the walls of Halifax Elementary School, $5,563,151.64 for the regular education, $1,691,433.74 for the special ed programs, and then the budget for K through 6 out-of-district special education. This is after circuit breaker. And I should also have put in there that we are allocating 240 grant funds. So this is after circuit breaker and after 240 grant funds are being used to pay down tuition. That Halifax will pay $45,338.05. That's what's budgeted for tuitions and transportation for Halifax K through 6 students in FY25. We do estimate $605,000 in circuit breaker funds will be used for tuitions and transportation. We do estimate $182,000 from the 240 grant will be used for tuitions.
So to be clear, a method of interpreting this essentially is that the out-of-district special education fund from FY24 is now in the assessment at Silver Lake.
Yes.
Okay. And
Well, not completely. Only the pre-K students and 7 through 12.
okay. But with that moved, the net of the assessment plus their budget is an overall increase to them of like 1.3 million or something like that. Okay.
Can I just make a point about how circuit breaker is being applied because of how circuit breaker law is written? For the elementary committees here this evening, and those of you who are interested, all of the circuit breaker will be applied still to Kingston, Plimpton, and Halifax committees because they're paid the year after the services are delivered. So we will be servicing less kids in the budget being presented right here. And we will all face mini fiscal cliffs in FY26 in Halifax, Kingston, and Plimpton when the circuit breaker goes to the same split that we're going to be seeing for our out-of-district tuitions. So we need to be prepared for that as well, that the elementaries are going to face a small fiscal cliff. I already calculated mine will be a 2% increase for FY26 before we even take into account anything else. So I'm starting at 2 before any contractual obligations, inflation, etc.
Provided there's not any FY25 circuit breaker that can be carried over into FY26. So we're allowed to carry over 1 year of circuit breaker.
What's going so late?
Very good market.
Circuit breaker is a reimbursement program, and the towns paid in FY24, and so the towns will receive in FY25. Silver Lake will pay in FY25 and will receive some circuit breaker in '26. Sadie?
Can you repeat how much of that circuit breaker into 40 grant was?
$605,000 for circuit breaker is our estimate, and $182,000 for the 240 grant. Circuit breaker, the 240 grant can be used, both circuit breaker and 240 grant can be used on special education costs. 240 grant, if we've only allocated that for tuitions at this time. Moving on to Kingston. Same graphic, same little houses, so little schools. Keep in mind the number on the top right-hand side is an estimate based on FY25 salaries. So in FY24, there was $198,000 budgeted for out-of-district vocational students. Within the buildings of Kingston, $10,249,247.49 was budgeted for regular education, $2,104,110.38 for special education. There was $2,357,119.37 budgeted for out-of-district special education, and then there was another $1,527,835.60 budgeted, again, for out-of-district tuitions that was money paid into revolving accounts for students in Kingston to attend programs largely at the high school and the middle school. Kingston didn't send anybody to Plimpton or Halifax for programs. In FY25, we've budgeted $250,400 for out-of-district vocational tuitions. Within the buildings, $11,040,603.94 for regular education, $3,496,502.98 for special education. The K through 6 out-of-district special education tuitions and transportation costs after circuit breakers subtracted after we've allocated money to the 240 grant is $174,885.58, of which, and then there's an additional $315,000 of tuition and transportation we'll pay for with the 240 grant, and an additional $1 million in tuition and transportation we'll pay for with circuit breaker.
Paul, man, thank you. Sarah, my question is, does the FY25 numbers that we're looking at right now include the additional proposed positions by the building principals?
No.
Thank you.
None of these, this is the level funded budget.
Thank you.
Level service.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
level.
This is the level service budget. Moving on, alphabetically, Plimpton comes next. Same format. Plimpton in FY24 budgeted $81,917.41 for out-of-district vocational, $2,832,133.83 for regular education within the Dennett Elementary School, $685,536.59 for special education within the building. Out-of-district special ed tuitions and transportation was $606,328.72. And then there was $96,778.80 that was budgeted in the out-of-district line to pay for programs in Halifax and Kingston at the middle school and high school. In FY25, we have budgeted $93,900 for out-of-district vocational, $3,132,760.33 for regular education within the building, $688,678 for special education, and then the K through 6 out-of-district special education after circuit breaker is $172,657.66. We have allocated $60,743.34 from the 240 grant towards tuitions, and $107,000 in circuit breaker for Plimpton.
And similar question to Mr. Lewis, this does not reflect the $160,000 in additional cuts that the Plimpton School Committee asked to be considered for the next version of the budget, correct? Thank you. So just look at our small numbers, and we are already considering $160,000 in cuts to those numbers up there on that board tonight, just to put things in perspective. Thank you.
So as you know, the Silver Lake budget looks different. So in FY ―24, within the building of Silver Lake Middle School and Silver Lake High School, there was budgeted $29,600,000 for regular education and special education. Also within the building, there was $1,958,706.75 approximately, again, these are approximations, that is for programs in the middle school and the high school that's in '24 is being paid for by the tuition lines in Halifax, Kingston, and Plimpton, and the tuition money is going into a revolving account and then paying the staff and costs of the programs. There were no Silver Lake revolving programs at Halifax Elementary School this year. The Silver Lake revolving programs at Kingston Elementary School and Kingston Intermediate School had staffing costs of $581,553.19, and there are no Silver Lake revolving programs at Dennett Elementary School this year. And when I say revolving programs, those are specialized classrooms that offer specialized services where students from out of district, which would be not your town, could attend. The FY '25 budget for Silver Lake Regional High School includes $26,587,815.64 for regular education. It includes $4,601,093.40 for special education, and the integrated preschool is now part of the Silver Lake buildings, and that would be $2,110,342.10. Silver Lake is now responsible for pre-K out-of-district students and students grades 7 through 12 plus in out-of-district placements. And that we have budgeted $7,268,519.39. Again, there is no circuit breaker offset in FY '25 for Silver Lake. We have allocated $502,000 in the IDEA 240 grant for tuitions for Silver Lake.
Sarah, that's not a tremendously significant increase to 240. We received $498,000 in FY '25 at Silver Lake. It doesn't seem to have the same follow the student modality that in-state circuit breaker funding does. So I just want to be clear if anybody's tracking the 240 versus the circuit breaker. The 240 grant is a federal grant that goes to DESE, and then DESE pays it out to us as a 240 grant. And what Sarah just quoted is just a nominal increase over what we got in FY '25 here at Silver Lake.
Which is what we've been using as estimates in all 4 entities.
Great, thank you.
So what are our increased costs in FY '25? Contractual obligations. Please don't look at that and say, oh, look at those teachers, contractual obligations. The cost of elevator inspections, the cost of fire inspections, and we have contracts with vendors. That is, so all contractual obligations, staff members, and all of our vendors that we have contracts with, there has been increased costs. There's an increase in cost for health insurance. There's been increased costs for special education, transportation, tuition, increased costs in supplies, and utilities. These are the increased costs for FY '25. That's the second part of the presentation. Any questions?
Thank you.
We have also in your packet tonight an article from the Boston Globe which highlights that these increased costs are being felt statewide. This is not particular to Silver Lake. What further complicates the Silver Lake budget is that we are creating a new structure and new funding mechanisms because the way it was being done is not allowable by the state and regulations and the law. So this wasn't just something we chose to do. This is something that we have to do.
But net, we would be facing these same increases, this same budgeting challenge, even if we had left the pre-K where it was.
Yes.
I just want to make that clear, and that's becoming more and more evident, I think, as we talk.
That is why I felt it was important to put everything together, all four entities, and look at all four for FY24 and compare that to FY25.
Jason?
I mean, I'm extremely aware of what's happening around the state. I'm in touch with school committees on a daily basis, rural, suburban, urban, and I'm not seeing a double-digit increase at other districts, including regional school districts. Now, I know I don't have all of the schools here, but the highest I'm able to find, one was a 7% increase, and that was a school that received ESSER funds, and they're also a Student Opportunity Act district, so they're backfilling all their ESSER positions with Student Opportunity Act funds. That's a 7% increase. They're retaining all of those extra personnel they brought on during COVID. And regional, 6.79% increase, which is causing overrides in 3 towns that have been planned and spoken to the towns for over a year at this point to set up that potentiality. Most other school districts in Massachusetts are hovering somewhere between a 2.9 to a 4.9% increase. And a lot of that is because of not what the school committee came up with, but what is the constraints of the town's abilities to pay. These are numbers that are believed to be able to get passed by town meetings. So I'm not seeing double digits getting passed anywhere. I understand that's the true cost after analyzing the numbers. But unfortunately, this is where it really comes back to that total cost of education being an 11.6% increase for Halifax, but it's a 6.6% increase of their total town's budget. And in Massachusetts with Prop 2.5 plus local growth, a 6.6 is not doable, and that's before any other department even gets a look at an increase. 15.1% increase for Kingston represents a 7.9% increase in their $54 million annual budget before any other department gets to look at it. Plimpton itself is a 5.7% increase just for the $738,000 that's here today. And last year, my town put forth over $500,000 to support the schools. And I can tell you right now, and Rob can probably attest to it as well, when the new tax bills came in with the new tax rates, a lot of my neighbors let me know that they felt the pinch. We don't have the capacity under the levy to do what's on the paper here today. That's the sad reality. None of our towns do. And we're going to have to make some awfully difficult choices. I really don't like seeing contractual obligations at the top there, because you're right, Sarah, the first thing people think is the teachers. And there's 2 people, or groups of people right now, that I am absolutely devastated for, and that's the students of our schools and the professionals who work in them, because we know where this is going to land. We have legal obligations to the special ed increases, and we have contractual obligations that we can't get out of. The stark picture that you laid out today was illustrative of where the problem came from, the fiscal problem. But now we have a tremendous managerial issue to deal with. And I don't know how much longer we want to keep going through the how did we get here, and when we want to start talking about what are we going to do about it.
May I ask, please? Sarah, are these figures that were presented, are these inclusive all the versions that we see in our packets, like
Yes. So
including the ones that we haven't seen at like the Kingston School
Correct.
meeting? Okay, thank you.
So there have been updates to budgets that haven't been presented to school committees yet.
But yet this, like the 6 million or 7.5 million, that's inclusive of all of those changes.
That is, everything was updated Saturday.
So to Jason's point, it's still too expensive.
Well, and then a comment on Jason's point is that we're in a different part of the budget process than a lot of communities. We had a budget in January, we had 4 budgets in January, and when I put all the numbers together for the 4 budgets in January and did the assessment, we kind of have been at the holy cow stage since then, and put everything under the microscope and made adjustments and looked at everything and re-looked at everything and brought in former school business manager Christine Healy to look at everything, and I can confidently say to you that what you have in your hands for all 4 entities is the level service budget. And other school committees didn't have to deal with a new school business manager and restructuring, and got a budget a couple months ago and started doing things.
Understood.
Like other places are in a very different timeline than
But
us.
we're actually at both places at the same time because of the statutory obligation
Right.
to have our budget done in 45 days prior to town meeting.
Correct?
I was hoping, just like you were, that you would find some mistakes in the money.
I was hoping for a big mistake. I was hoping for a medium-sized mistake in 100 different places. I would have been okay with a smaller mistake in 1,000 places.
But I don't know if this is the point where we can say, okay, we understand, we see that the 15.5% increase is legitimate. Let's start dealing with it.
Yeah.
Or do we
So-
keep explaining it?
Well, I have 3 more slides.
Okay, please finish up.
So, I lied, I have 4 more slides.
Fair?
So, I wanted to talk about we took a look at the big picture, the 30,000-foot view. We took a look at each of the towns. Now I want to talk just about Silver Lake. What are the primary reasons for the Silver Lake increase? $2.5 million was the addition of pre-K. I know that. So on 2 slides ago, there was a different number for pre-K. That's because that was an estimate with salaries only. This 2.5 million is the cost of the technology, the room rental, the nurse stipend. This is the total all-in cost for pre-K. We have out-of-district tuition and transportation for Silver Lake, pre-K to 7 through 12 plus of approximately $7.3 million, and extended school year, an estimate of $362,066. Keep in mind, extended school year is a new cost for each of the 4 entities. Extended school year was previously funded from a revolving account, and money was charged to tuitions. The extended school year is in each of the 4 budgets now. There was a salary increase, and this is all payroll from FY24 to FY25 of $2,911,444.60. That's a 14.7% increase. That is, now keep in mind, all payroll is custodians, paraprofessionals, anyone paid out of the operating budget, not food service revolving accounts. We have our coaches in here, teachers, administrators.
I think we just need to illustrate that number again, though, for a moment. Sarah, 14.7% increase. No individuals got a a 14.7% increase. We negotiated with our teachers in good faith. They took a modest increase. This is not coming from the teachers. This is coming from the additional personnel that we brought over to the Silver Lake budget, plus the increases of the personnel that we currently have here. So I want everyone to understand that no one is getting a payday from this terrible number that we're seeing in front of us tonight.
In part of the work that was done in analyzing where the heck did the big increase come from, we put together, and I mentioned this earlier, a special ed comparison, a year-to-year comparison, what happened in FY23, what was budgeted in FY24, what's actually being paid in FY24, and what's projected to be paid in FY25. So this is a link to that. You have that all in your packets. I don't know if you want to spend some time to talk about that spreadsheet or have questions about that, but essentially, it was earlier in the presentation, and the summary of that spreadsheet is we have approximately $980,000 in additional placements in FY24, and we have approximately $1.6 million in additional placements in FY25.
Are you adding those two numbers together? So our concern is those two numbers added together, the 980,000 is not incorporated in the 1.6 million?
It is not. So when you look at the increase in special education from FY24 to FY25, it's going up in two steps.
Unbudgeted.
980,000 unbudgeted this year, and another 1.6. And when Dr. Harries and I first spoke about budgeting special ed, there's different philosophies, and this is what we as school business managers call butts in seats. If there's going to be a child in a placement next year, we've budgeted for it.
Jason.
So, Madam Chair, I just want you to hold on to that $2.1 million in circuit breaker number. That's for FY24. Because we will have some of that for our FY26 budget at the Silver Lake level. And that's going to go directly to one of my proposals this evening for dealing with the budget shortfalls.
I'm sorry, what number?
Hi there. The 2.1 million overall in FY25 or FY24.
Got it, thank you.
Right? In FY25, it's going to still be allocated to the elementaries.
Yes.
But we can count on in FY26, approximately half of that money potentially being Silver Lake funds, if not more, because of the additional placements that we just referenced here tonight.
Yes.
So in FY26 at Silver Lake, we could see over $1 million in circuit breaker to help us offset the increases we're seeing to the budget. We have a difficult year this year until we realize some of that circuit breaker. I have a proposal later this evening that will come back to that number. So I just wanted everyone to put the 2.1 million in circuit breaker into their head for a later discussion.
So at this point, we really need direction from all of our school committees. In our previous meetings, the school committee talked about how they were going to present this to the towns, how they were going to be prepared for town meeting with frequently asked questions, discussions with the towns in terms of what reductions could mean, and the direction the school committee wants to go in. So again, based upon the direction that the school committee wants to go in, will influence how you present these budgets to your towns. And if you are looking for us to reduce the budget, we need direction from you.
May I ask a point of order?
Sure.
When there is a suggestion like what Jason just mentioned, he's going to have one later on, does it need to be voted by an individual committee as we're going through discussion? Just so that we're not sending you on a tailspin, but it hasn't been voted by the committee.
Well, I think we'll be, go ahead, Jason.
I think since we have so many members of our town officers in attendance tonight, and we have an agenda that will go through our own budgets,
Right.
in a certain order. I think it would behoove the school committees to open the floor to any questions, comments, concerns, and direction from the towns. And then we can proceed through and make adjustments to the budgets based on some of that feedback as well. If they're so inclined to give any comment or ask any questions at this point, I would like to open the floor to our guests.
Can I add something to that, just before we do that? Can we also have a discussion amongst school committee members, once we've given our guests a chance to speak, in regards to areas of the budget that we can look at decreasing before we go line item by line item, which might get a little bit more, I think, clouded, because I think, like, to Jason's proposal, I think we've all got something that we'd maybe like to throw out there as suggestions, but we don't want to, I guess, blanket statement saying, you know, I don't know the best way to go about something like
Right,
that.
so, again, I think we need to open it up. Silver Lake has 3 tiers of cuts as proposed by the administration to consider. There's other ideas, but why don't we wait until we get to that portion, once we hear from the towns.
Thank you.
Eric?
Eric Crowe, Kingston Board of Selectmen. As most of you know, I was on the elementary school committee for 16 years and then the regional school committee for the past several years. I'm certainly missing all the fun this year. The Board of Selectmen is so much easier compared to what you guys have to do. You know, I sat here many, many years making cuts to budgets to make it more palatable for the towns, but I've never seen having to start with such a high number that you have to cut down. And I just want to remind you, most of you guys already know this, but one of the biggest problems that we've had with the budget over the past 10 or 12 years has been the charter schools. So if you start cutting too many programs and cutting too many activities, families are going to take their kids and say, I'm taking my kid out and sending them to charter school, which costs us more money, hits the budget even harder, and it's a big problem. You don't want people leaving the school system, you want people to stay here. The other thing I think is in terms of how to present it to the towns during the town meeting. Obviously, you're going to need a lot of paperwork, whatever number you have, but if it's higher than a normal year, it's going to be a big sell to the towns. And again, I'm just speaking for myself. There are other people here from Kingston who may have different views. But I think one of the most important things to do potentially would be to take the average cost per regular day student from 24 to 25, because if the cuts that you're making are then cutting that expenditure, I think that's fair to have the towns understand that. So if you're cutting, I don't know what the number is, but if it's $10,000 a year for regular day student in 24 and 23, and we're cutting it down to 8,000, that's a big jump. So whatever that number is, I think it would be important to know when these numbers are sent to the town meeting. And also, you know, really explaining that the number of kids in special ed, especially out of district, has increased a lot. And we've had this conversation over and over at Kingston town meetings when people have looked at our budgets when we've had years with big jumps in special ed. And at one point we separated them out. So we had a special ed budget as well as a regular ed budget to make it more understandable to the taxpayers. So again, thank you for everything you guys are doing. Good luck. I know it's hard, but you guys are doing good work.
Carl Pike from Kingston. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee, previously the treasurer. I'd just like to give you an order of magnitude number that if Kingston is looking at an increase of $4.3 million for the cost of education, we could, our excess levy capacity right now, with our current budget that we've put together for all of our other departments, includes, the excess levy capacity is about $2.5 million. So that we would be immediately $1 million problem that we just could not do anything with, except a Proposition 2.5. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. I think that a lot of you know me. I have always supported the schools. I will continue to support the schools. I've already been talking to our people that, hey, this is a year that 3%, 3.5% doesn't make it, okay? However, I also don't believe that a number of 10 or 15% can make it. We've got to come to some kind of happy medium. Thank you.
You guys have these numbers tonight. I think you're going to need time to give the administration time on whatever decision the committees make to come back with you for cuts. Right now, Kingston's town meeting is set for May 4th. You guys have to have a budget for Silver Lake by March 20th. I would recommend that the committee ask Kingston to push back the town meeting. I know you have to get to a number, but I think to talk about what the effects are going to be, I think you need at least 2 weeks. I mean, you need longer than that, but I would request you ask for at least 2 weeks and ask the same from Kingston, from Halifax and Clifton, the same. So it gives the administration time to not only catch up from the work that needs to be done for this fiscal year, to give you the deficit numbers for special ed for this year that you need to ask for in the special town meetings that need to take place. But you also have to have time to go through all the budgets of any changes you make in the proposals. And that's not a quick turnaround because you're jumping from one committee to the next committee and you're not making headway on completing tasks. I understand the administration aspect of this. Any change that you make, you're going to have to give them multiple days for each budget. So if you get 2 weeks, that might give them 3 days to work, and then they have to work continuously for the next 2 weeks. So maybe a month is more realistic, but that depends on what you guys decide to do.
Can I just add here, about Kingston, my understanding, and Kim correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is we can put in a placeholder for the budget number. It doesn't, I don't think it has to be by the 20th. And I did talk to the town clerk and the town administrator. We can move our town meeting if we have to. Obviously, the more notice, the better, but am I wrong?
Yeah, to add to that, Kim Member, Kingston Board of Selectmen, my understanding is a preliminary budget number as a placeholder would fit the 45-day deadline, and that can be changed. If it's a couple days later, even the day before, we can change it if we have to. Obviously not ideal, but just to tag on to Eric's comment earlier, something I think would be helpful regardless of the end number that we end at. It would be helpful not just to see the budgeted fiscal year 24 versus the budgeted fiscal year 25, but the actual as well, even if it's thus far. That's how the sort of town side of the house does it. We see the budgeted amount, the actual so far as of the day that budget's pulled, and then the budget for 25. And I think that really helps. You can see the increase or anything that happened during the year.
So one of the changes I've made, and the school committee members might notice this when they look in their packets at the line item budgets, the line item budgets that I provide for them have the FY21 actual expenditures, 22 actual expenditures, 23 actual expenditures, the 24 budget, and I added in a column for the FY24 expenditures year to date. And so the budgets that you have in your packets are our expenditures in those lines through Saturday, last Saturday.
Would that information be available to other committees, the public, anything like that?
So all of these documents will be posted to our website, but I also had asked Karen to please send out to the town administrators the presentation and the budgets after this evening's presentation.
Great, thank you.
Sandy?
Hi, Carol Calhoun for the town of Halifax. If you're looking for direction, Halifax really cannot afford. We've been going through our budget, it's a tight year anyways. We cannot afford a total school cost, the total cost of education to go up more than 3%. We just can't fit it in the budget.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Marilyn Brown, Finance Committee in Plimpton. I have to concur with what the previous speaker just said. Looking at the numbers that we're preliminary putting the budget together now, with the figures you've given us, we would be over our levy limit. We can't do this. You please reduce the budget.
Thank you. Cody?
Cody Haddad, Halifax Town Administrator. One of the things to consider as well is, you mentioned to add 2 staff for the current fiscal year, 1.5 teachers, 2 paraprofessionals for the elementary school. We're taking on 3 more professionals in fiscal 25. That's cost to the town as well, particularly with health insurance. So those are costs that aren't necessarily shown in your budget, but we are also absorbing.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you all. Jean?
Is it fair to say, Dr. Parenti, that the changes that have been, or any additions that have been made to the 2024 budget are due to special education requirements?
Special education costs, if you remember back in November when I gave my presentation, I gave you the full one there. I showed you the historical data all the way back, and that we had a growing need for special education services. More and more students, especially in Halifax. The referrals to date also indicate that we're going to have another year of big growth in special education in this district, in all areas, in all of our districts. The costs that you see for personnel are not additional personnel that we hired. They were additional personnel that came in after the budget last year. The only personnel that we hired for special education are one-to-one paraprofessionals for the IEP teams. And I believe you approved for 1 day a week speech and language pathologist for the integrated preschool. So what you see in that staffing, all of those paraprofessionals, those people came in after the budget. For example, in our Halifax school, we have the DLC program, 1 teacher, 2 paras. So while we're saving money on the programmatic piece, where Halifax doesn't have to send their children across the district for transportation, and we're having our own kids in Halifax, the cost of setting up that classroom initially is a lot more expensive. Eventually, it will weigh equal, but right now, during the first year, it doesn't. We also brought back approximately 8 students from out of district this year. So those are tuitions that we're saving. Now, some of them are coming back right now, so we're only realizing half a year of the savings, but it's a savings for transportation and tuitions. So that's helping to offset those 14 students that were not budgeted last year. If you remember, during our first budget meeting, 14 students that did not have placeholders that went out of district last year. That's helping to fund them. So my calculations for the kids that we've retrieved is somewhere around $500,000 or $600,000, give or take a few dollars, because every child's coming back. It would help when I go to provide services for our school district if I could have flexibility. So for example, if I have services that are in need over in Halifax, and my speech and language person is in Kingston, I can't cross over that. So it's not the most efficient way of paying for SPED, so the costs are not as efficient as they could be. But there is a growing need for special education in the district. The referrals are very high in the district, and we can expect probably close to another 180 students on IEPs just from the referrals this year. And again, those are team decisions made by the team. And I can give guidance, and I can make suggestions, but I'm not enough. So I think that the first area we need to look at is why are children being referred. We're long since after COVID now. I would expect that to go up right after COVID, but it's been a while now. Some schools have half of the referrals by teachers. Not parents.
I think I can partially answer your question. I think parents all want the best education for their student, and what Eric just warned us about is if we don't provide what a parent thinks their child deserves, they're just going to send them elsewhere. And I think parents, not speaking as a parent that's done it, but maybe looking to protect their child's education. And so if they get them on an IEP, then we can't make cuts if they're protected, but everybody else, they're not protected. So they're going to lose more services, and it's unfortunately going to have the exact opposite outcome, is we're just going to push children into those services that they still need.
So one of the things when I was looking at the cost of special education in our district is I also look at the outcome. And the outcome is dismal. It's one thing to pay a lot of money for special education in the district, but then have the outcome for our students be fantastic, and it's not. There's anywhere between a 20 and a 25-point achievement gap between our general education students and our special education students, and that is unacceptable. So we're paying a lot of money, but we're not getting the most for our money. And that's another degree.
So Dr. Canavisi, and you and I talked a little bit here and there, just chit-chatting about this. You're a new steward of this program for us. You're bringing a fresh set of eyes, fresh ideas. You've drilled into a lot of this since you've been on board. I guess as one school committee member, I understand the requirements, and I would never deny any child anything they need. I guess I would just ask you to be aware, as you sound like you want to be and are, of what the children need to successfully migrate through the school system and, graduate and move on. But be aware of what levels children really need versus what levels perhaps aren't really warranted. We have an enormous volume right now in the school system, more coming. So there's going to be a lot of onus on you and your group, to be honest with you, to make sure that we're servicing the children the appropriate way for the child and the taxpayer, I guess is what I'm saying.
I understand what that is before me, and I'm okay with it.
Yep.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no fear of that. I'm a turnaround principal, and I'm a turnaround special education director, and I'm okay with that. What I need to make sure, though, is that the staff understands, regular and special education understand that subpar education for special education students is not going to be tolerated. It just will not be tolerated. And if that takes me walking through every single classroom, inclusion classrooms, and that only children that need specialized instruction according to the eligibility criteria of the law receive an IEP. If you need to change the standards-based curriculum and instruction, that warrants an IEP. But if you need accommodations, that's a 504. And so we have to take a look at that as well. And that's training and building capacity.
Thank you.
Dr. Henry, this is a really, really minor detail. I'm just taking some notes, and I want to make sure I get this data right. When you were saying that there was a 25% achievement gap, was that our total body of special education students or the out-of-district ones specifically?
That it's a 25 point. It's anywhere between 20 and 25 points if you look at the MCAS scores. And if you go through grades 3 to 8 and 7 to 12, it's anywhere between, there's nothing less than 20-point gap between the regular education students and the special education.
So I guess my point of clarification is that when you say that, is that gap referring to all of our special education students or only the out-of-district? Okay, so
it doesn't include the out-of-district. It only includes grades 3 to 8 and then 7 through 12. Who take the MCAS.
Go ahead.
Hi, Matt Mello, Kingston. I'm also a teacher, but I just want a clarification. Do you have any idea how those numbers compare to the state average?
Special education?
Yeah, in other words, is it, yeah, I don't know. I think
So the state special education is around 19%, and I believe our percentages are, I have them,
Mark, are you asking about expenditures or the gap?
No, the gap, the achievement gap.
Oh, the achievement gap?
Yes, I mean,
I don't really care what the state says, to be quite honest with you. I'm not going to compare myself to the lowest average I want to compare ourselves to the best. I've never done that as a principal. I've always had higher expectations.
Sure, just a follow-up question on that. What does lowest average mean?
So the state means every student in the district averaged out, and that's your average. That means all the urban districts, suburban districts, and average out. I don't particularly like that comparison because we are a unique district, we're a suburban district, we're a highly affluent district, and our children come to us a lot more prepared and have a lot more experiences than an urban district. So we have a great foundation to which to build on. So our expectation for our children are to be champions and to reach at a higher level than I would a student that is not experienced or have any of the types of experience to connect learning.
Okay, next question.
And we can get philosophical
No, it's
about
not
this.
philosophical. I just want to know because your numbers, you seem to know numbers out, which is good and fine, helpful. How do we compare to equivalent school districts then on that average?
So if you go to the DART and you can compare that, have you ever been to the Profiles website?
Brian, do you want to jump in? And then I think we need to...
The questions are good. Dr. Panarisi and I are working on our MTSS process to try to think about ways to intervene and provide supports for our students, whether they be special education students or general education students. So I think this is, I appreciate the questions, and there's a lot of data behind it too, and we take it very seriously, and we're working together on it. So I think this is also the budget piece too, and it's a big important part of it. And I just want you to know that we're working on it, and appreciate the questions too, and it's a big discussion.
Okay, thank you.
And we did in fact share our MCAS presentations early in the year in each district and collectively. So that information should also be on there in terms of the the MCAS data.
No, I'm sorry, I'm going to make a suggestion. I think we need to, this is all very important discussion, and we need to continue it. I think we need to begin moving through the agenda. The next topic. Gordon, I'll let you go, and then I...
Could we ask the elected town officials and the appointed town officials what number they want the total budget for their town to be for the total cost of education? Because we heard 3% from Halifax.
Yeah.
What is that number?
Yeah.
Between the two budgets?
Yeah.
That would be approximately $450,000 of an overall increase in education for the town of Halifax. Cody, am I good?
Sounds about right.
I can speak to Plimpton. Plimpton would be looking at like 3.2 for max.
In Plimpton, that would give us approximately $250,000 for total cost of education.
And Kingston would like about $1.2 million as a total increase, but I suspect we'd find a way to live with $1.5 million as a total increase.
So does the Board of Select agree with those numbers?
Defer to the chair of finance committee on this one, it's the leads.
Thank you.
So since I wear the hats of two school committees, I have the ability to digest that information and what that means for me in both of my roles. And unfortunately, that means I don't want to go too deep. Towns, please hear me out on this. I don't want to go too deep tonight on the Silver Lake budget, because like you said, we can always amend on the floor if we need to go lower. You know how hard it is to amend up if we go too deep tonight.
Right.
So I would suggest that we need a reduction of about $1.5 million in Silver Lake this evening. Again, I've already said that we are going to be discussing an additional $160,000 for the Dennett Elementary School. But we are also in a lucky position where we received $152,000 more in Chapter 70 funding than the previous fiscal year. A $1.5 million reduction here, a $160,000 reduction at Plimpton, and using the additional Chapter 70 funds would get me to a $250,000 overall increase in the cost of education for the town of Plimpton. I ran the numbers for Halifax because our numbers are a little bit closer than the Kingston brethren in the house tonight. If we took the budget down by 1.5 million, and Lauren, I do not envy you this, you looked at about $500,000 to $600,000 at Halifax Elementary, you would get awfully close to that $450,000 as well. And Tim, you have the biggest number of all of us as an individual school committee, and I know that you've been desperate to add positions to your school for quite some time now. Unfortunately, it looks like your chunk of change is going to be rather more significant. I'd be happy to talk offline with you on that.
Thank you.
So that's what I'm seeing as bottom line numbers.
Can you email me those numbers?
I kind of had a feeling that's where we were, so I made a spreadsheet that I'm willing to share publicly, since we're in an open meeting. So, if anybody would like a copy, please feel free. Again, these are what I like to call back of the napkin math problems. Because I am not a school business administrator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I would say tonight at Silver Lake, we need to go about 1.5 million in.
Yeah.
And then the locals can handle it when they have their next school committees. And we can discuss it further there.
So we should continue down the agenda, and then we will come to a point where we're going to be discussing that. And Jason, thank you for running all those numbers ahead of time. Okay. We can share, I can,
Yeah, please. I just have one that has my notes on
Folks, I'd like to continue on. I'd like to continue on. Who's our agenda that? Thank you. Do we want to continue down the agenda, or are we going to move a couple things around?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the House document discussion later in the meeting and go to number 4, the K-6 curriculum coordinator discussion, and possible vote for Union 31 members only.
Okay. So, yeah. Second from Silver Lake?
That was my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on Silver Lake? No. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Is there a motion on the union because it's a joint agenda?
I'll make a motion to move item 4 on the agenda to the next item to discuss the K-6 curriculum coordinator discussion and possible vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the K-6 curriculum coordinator discussion and possible vote.
Sure. In your packet tonight, you will see a shared cost agreement template that was produced by Attorney Russ O'Dray for your consideration. This is something that the groups have discussed, and the terms of the shared cost are outlined in Appendix A. You'll see a list under A1, the positions that are designated as employees of the district, and the district receiving school systems shall pay the percentage of the gross salary and benefits related to said positions based on the prior school year's October 1 enrollment. And those positions are listed there. And then underneath that, The following position shall be designated as an employee of the Kingston Public Schools and the Kingston Public Schools and receiving school systems shall pay the percentage of gross salary and benefits related to said positions based upon the prior school year's October 1 enrollment number at the elementary level. So the reason why I'm asking you to review and approve this first is because the next vote would be about the next thing would be to look at the curriculum coordinator draft contract and potentially approve that. So before you review the individual's contract, I would recommend that you review first the language from Attorney Rusty Correa regarding how that shared cost would be split among the elementary schools.
Any questions?
When we get to the actual dollar amount, I would like to have a discussion with that point, Madam Chair.
May I ask a clarifying question? If we were to vote number 4, is that going to move this item to Kingston's budget immediately? Or would we still be able to discuss it in item 5? Any dollar amounts? It would no longer
The way
be
I'm
a
reading
silver
it, it's the minute we voted, it goes to your budget.
Right, so it would no longer be a silver lake position.
So just then prior to taking the vote, transferring any authority from it, with the consideration that we're talking about doing potentially $1.5 million in cuts this evening in Silver Lake alone, I would like to ask with all due respect to the administration, has there been any conversation about the administration taking a 0 for FY25 to try and offset some of the budgetary implications of the cuts that we all fear will end up going to staff?
No, there hasn't been a discussion. We haven't been asked to have that discussion. We have had that discussion in the past, and we, during COVID, we did agree to take 0% in the past, but that question has not been raised. I would like to mention, however, that we're in a different position than we were during COVID. And the reality is that in some cases, we have difficulty, just like our contracts have to be competitive, so do our administrative salaries. And so, again, I don't know what impact that could have. So I just issue that caution because there are opportunities at competitive rates.
So follow-up question to that. How was the administrative team made whole or attempted to make whole after the 0%?
What do you mean by that?
In the subsequent years, was the withheld increase recuperated in any manner by the administrative team after they took the 0? Did they skip a year of the contract and realize a 6% after the 1 year of taking the 0? Were there any monetary adjustments made to salaries and contracts after taking the 0?
In the end, we didn't end up having to cut those positions. And so, if I recall correctly, it wasn't required? Right. So it was voted that we were willing to do it, but it never actually came to pass.
I recall, I just wanted to put everything on the table. I want to make sure that if we are going to make cuts, and hopefully we are able to give some direction to administration on how we would like to see the cuts made, that between now and town meeting, if we find other ways to make those cuts, that we turn over all rocks possible and we take into consideration all of our options to make the numbers work with the least impact on the students in the classrooms on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
I would actually like to table this item to keep number 5 intact to include this position, because speaking as both the Silver Lake Regional member as well as the Kingston member, we may not be able to afford this position in the Kingston budget this year. So we may have to table the conversation.
I understand this position must exist in one of the schools in order to continue. It cannot continue as a Silver Lake cost because it is purely elementary. It's another complexity brought about by our partially regionalized system.
So budgetarily, what would the implications be? Would it be the same implications if Clinton took it on instead?
Well, I think based on the estimates that you just provided to us, it looks like Kingston is perhaps facing more than $1 million in cuts than Halifax or Clinton. So seeing these figures presented in real time, I think that it would be more prudent to ask Halifax or Clinton to assume this position. So, because I think it would have less of an overall implication to the budget. I understand that it's shared, like we'd still be paying our percent, but the overall, I don't know, I think, I don't know, I defer to.
I understand your concern. I have no issue, Rob, I don't know if you do, and if Kingston is having concerns in housing this position, if we look into having it as a Clinton position and sharing it out that way, I don't know if that would change the bottom line.
No, it won't, because Kingston's still responsible for 60% of all of our elementary students, but I just want to make sure that we're not voting this too prematurely when we have other cuts that we're going to have to consider in line item.
If Plimpton takes on the role, we would be charged a percentage for that salary.
We're essentially going
So
to
it's-
be paying the same amount.
Right.
Anyway.
Right.
But I just think that, I think this is a premature discussion to other things.
Well, I think this is why we pushed up the entire shared cost budget in the first place.
I
is Some of them have contractual obligations built into them, 3-year agreements with administrators. And again, we're in that situation, unfortunately, where it's a catch-22, because we do need the overall shared cost number to facilitate the Silver Lake budget tonight, because we need to give a number to the towns. However, this position is slightly different because we have a different timeline for the local budgets.
I think what I'm trying to put into words is, I'd like this particular discussion to be part of a shared cost discussion, not just a Kingston discussion. So I don't think that I'm necessarily trying to offer the position to Plimpton or Halifax. I think I might have said
Madam
that.
Chair, I'd like to take item number 5 out of order, please.
Thank you.
I make that motion.
Is there a second? To move item number 5? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so let's discuss.
Okay.
So, would you like me to go over the positions that are slated? There's, so again, before you agree to any of these contracts, again, you would need to agree to the terms of how the cost would be shared. And then you have Karen Tringali, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, Dave Turcott, Director of Human Resources, Dave Murphy, Manager of Information Systems, and Jay Oikels, Computer Technician. All of those contracts were reviewed and presented at the previous Joint School Committee meeting, were reviewed by the Administrative Review Team and discussed in executive session.
If I may share that none of these contracts have been voted. We retain the right to see where we were at with the budget before we voted these contracts. And I'm just wondering where we previously discussed them in executive session, if this is able to be part of a public discussion now, individual contracts. Is that possible? Okay. So I will entertain any questions.
So I have no problem accepting any of the contracts as presented, with the raises as presented, with the caveat that we do, as the Union 31 members and as the Silver Lake Regional School, ask our administrators to consider taking a 0 for FY25, with the understanding that they have the option to say no. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. But at the same time, I don't want to lose the valuable personnel And I also do believe that in a normal fiscal situation, those people do deserve contractual agreement that I will vote yes for this evening. If it was a normal year, this wouldn't even be a contest at this point.
Great.
So I will make a motion to accept all of the contracts as presented by the admin review team, which I was a member of that executive session and heard all of the deliberation, with the caveat that the Silver Lake Regional School Committee and Union 31 does ask the superintendent to pursue conversations with the admin team about taking a zero for FY25. That's my motion.
And may I clarify that would include for the FY26 and the FY27, the salaries as presented, or 3% of their current salary starting in FY26?
Yeah, I wouldn't change any of the numbers in the contracts as stated.
Okay.
And would be open to compensatory negotiations upon the year of the zero being completed.
Okay.
Is there a motion made for both the Union and Silver Lake?
I will make the motion for both committees.
I'll second for Silver Lake.
And I'll second for the union.
All those in favor of the union?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor for Silver Lake? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And that was an ask to have...
It's an ask.
Yep.
But it does accept all of these contracts as presented.
Absolutely.
Can we return to item number 4? Which is the K-6 curriculum coordinator discussion, possible vote. Can we go ahead and vote her contract can we make a similar motion?
Yeah.
For, Jason, would you like to?
And again, when I first started at Dennett Elementary as a school committee member back in 2014, we still had books on the shelves that didn't talk about the International Space Station in 2014. Since we hired our curriculum coordinator, we've updated our curriculum and have an updated cycle to make sure our kids are working with the best materials possible. And it brings continuity for when they come up to the lake. I will make a motion to give Melissa her contract as discussed and presented, with the caveat that she is asked, as well as the rest of the administrative team, to consider taking a zero in FY25, with the ability to come back for compensatory charges after in FY26.
Is there a second from the union?
I'll second from the union.
All those in favor? Aye. Now, does the union need an additional vote to move that position to Kingston? Can we do that now? Tim, would you like? Okay, we can go and do that now. Is there a motion from Union 31 for that position to be assumed?
I make a motion to move the K-6 curriculum coordinator to the Kingston budget.
I'll second.
All those in favor of the union? Aye. Thank you. So Paul, I'm going to defer to you, number 6.
Okay. And I'm going to defer to
Which number?
number 6.
6.
Shared cost budget?
Yeah.
So Sarah has a total number with these anticipated costs in it.
The number that I have includes moving the special ed clerk out of the revolving account into the shared cost budget. It includes the integrated preschool executive assistant to the principal, who does a significant amount of work with special ed transportation across the district. So those two things are in addition to previous years. Total shared cost budget is $2,408,146.66.
Sarah, I'm sorry, can you give me that number again?
$2,408,146.66.
No, but I'm going to ask the question.
Go ahead.
Have we scoured that budget for all possible cuts?
Yes. Unfortunately, when Dave Turcott from HR and I scoured the budget, we found things that should have been in I am sorry to say, every time I put something under the microscope, I find things that I'm not happy finding, but there are things that were contractual amounts for staff members that were unbudgeted.
Understood. It's just, again, my fiduciary responsibility to the students is to make sure that, again, we turn over every rock possible to make sure that staff is the last thing that we look at to make that cut that we need to talk about tonight. So there's nowhere to trim anything from that with the contractual obligations we just voted here this evening, correct?
There is $10,000 I was asked to put in a buffer because the school committee has run into issues negotiating contracts with administrators.
And I'm not complicating that at all by asking them to take a zero potentially. Understood.
So there's $10,000 in the contract that doesn't belong to, I'm sorry, there's $10,000 in this budget that doesn't belong in any contract.
Second question, this $2.4 million shared cost budget, has this number been cooked into the overall cost of education shared tonight, or is this an additional $2.4 million?
A good portion of
Most of it is in.
Most of this is in there already.
Most of it?
Most of it, including the increases you just voted on, I'm sorry.
Okay. So the increases we just voted had already been baked
Yes.
into the numbers used this evening? Okay. All right. Just making sure. So I make a motion to accept the shared cost budget as presented. Do you need me to read the actual number for the minutes, or is that sufficient?
Probably do.
Yeah.
$2,408,146.66.
I'll second from Silver Lake.
Okay.
I made that motion for the union as well.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Okay. On the Silver Lake side, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And any discussion from the union? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I am going to suggest a 5-minute recess before we start to get into the Silver Lake budget.
Could we do house doctor? Only because the facilities director, is he still here? If we could do house doctor contract so that he could go home.
Anybody object to that? Okay, let's do that and then take a break. Oh, no. Okay, is he presenting it or?
I am.
Oh, okay.
He's just here in support.
Oh, okay, I didn't know, go ahead.
So, Silver Lake Regional School District went out to bid for what is called a house doctor agreement for engineering for projects. We, over the bids from different architectural firms were received a week and a half ago, and a committee convened to review the proposals. The committee consisted of myself, facility director Michael Wallace, school committee member Mark Guidaboni, who is the chair of the SAFER subcommittee, Superintendent Jill Prue, and Assistant Superintendent Ryan Lynch. We went through the process of evaluating the house doctor proposals, which we had to go through. We received 9 different proposals, and we had to go through them and rate them less advantageous, advantageous, highly advantageous, award points numbers to them. It took 2 meetings to get through all of it, and we had homework to do over the weekend to read all of everything we couldn't read on Friday. And in our meeting yesterday, we came to the clear, I'm going to call it a winner, but it's just the best proposal, and it came from Habib and Associates. And I would like to ask the school committee if they could vote to enter into a contract with Habib and Associates for 5 years for house doctor services.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'd like to thank the administration for the invitation to participate and spend the 5 hours in the conference room working with this. We vetted this company very well. I feel very happy with the results and very happy with the process that we used to do that. I'd like to encourage everybody to support the candidate we have. We have their presentation if anybody wants to take a look at it. Or during the meeting, go ahead. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jason.
I'd like to also say, as a former chair of the Safety, Fees, and Facilities and Revenue Subcommittee, that we've worked with the Dean and Associates in the past. I believe they also worked in Halifax on the project to some extent. We've had great success and a great relationship working with them. When I saw the header on the front of this as one of the proposals, I was thrilled to see that their hat was in the ring and that this is who you settled with to potentially offer to us tonight. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I have positive feelings about the past experience with them as well, so I'm also very pleased.
And briefly, for those that didn't understand, what House Doctor is going to provide us with engineering review services that will make our facilities management much more efficient. We're going to be saving time as well as money, we hope, in planning for our facilities needs with our schools now being almost 20 years old. So we appreciate the support of the committee and whoever's idea of the administration was to move this along. Thank you.
So you need a vote, right? Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept David as our and associate architects as our house doctor for Silver Lake.
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I am going to request a 5-minute break for everybody, and we can reconvene in a solid gated 5 minutes if we could. Okay, folks, thank you. Did you? I thought you had your hand up.
Paul, I believe Union 31 would like to adjourn its meeting within this meeting. Is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn for Union 31.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
I'd like to make a motion for Case and School Committee to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.
Keep up the good work, everybody.
Cal, thanks.
Does anyone want to make a motion for the school committee? I'll make a motion to adjourn the not Silver Lake, Halifax Elementary School Committee. Second. All in favor? Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so Silver Lake budget discussion. I'm just waiting for them to.
May I ask?
Sure.
Dr. Prue, I believe we're going to be presented with tiers of cuts.
We presented tiers of cuts in the first assessment presentation. The slides are in there. We have not been advised to go beyond that at this point. The tier 1 totals came primarily from line items for $167,000. Tier 2 came to about $265,000. And tier 3 came to $408,000.
So a total of $855, I think it was?
Yes.
Oh, Jason,
Go ahead.
Those were in the presentation tonight, though, right?
No.
no, they're in our,
Thank you.
When we asked for some room to potentially consider cuts, these were provided us, I think, on our February 7th meeting.
Right.
After our initial proposal.
yeah.
Okay, so I got no problem with tier 1, and I actually think that we need all $855,000 in cuts from tier 1 to tier 3. But I have some clarifying questions first, if you would so indulge. In tier 2, we have 2 full-time special ed support staffs at $55,000 each, 2 full-time middle school at $160,000 total, 1 full-time equivalent high school, $80,000. Are these cuts being made through attrition in any capacity in the Tier 2 level?
So it depends on which position you're talking about.
So it's a mixture?
It's a mixture.
Okay. Can you explain to me how much of this is attrition and how much this would be an actual reduction in force, please?
Sure, so the 1.0 FTE, let's start with the easiest. 1.0 FTE at the high school, we have budgeted $80,000 for a computer science teacher that we have not been able to fill. The 2.0 FTE at the middle school.
So, Jason, I'm sorry, I don't have much of a voice.
Oh, I understand
So
what
I'm
you did this
sorry.
evening. I am sorry.
At the middle school, there's a probable retirement, but then there's also some positions I didn't fill that I might be able to consolidate things in a way that I could keep the people I have. It might cut programming, like we talked about, and we got a Spanish teacher, but we don't know how that's going to fall out with different electives, what needs to be filled. So that's consideration.
Dr. Panarese, would you like to speak to the special education supports?
So with some careful scheduling, we can become a retiring integrated preschool teacher that we do not need to replace.
I think we're talking about the special education support on this line item.
Oh, those are paraprofessionals. So we look at the student enrollment in the substantially separate classrooms, and that structure of the classrooms to have 2 paras and 1 teacher for a total of 6 to 8 students. That's all the paras and teachers that are necessary. It's still above what the state tells us we have to have because it's 1 teacher with 8 students. We're doing 1 teacher, 2 paras for support for 6 to 8 students. So we're far above what the state mandates. It's still a lot of service in that 1 classroom, and anything excess of that, we have to cut. That should be the standard across all schools in all districts. If a student requires incredible support, that's a whole different story. But we have to have a structure, and the structure that I chose more than what the state, and enough to support students.
So that be attrition, do you believe?
Would they be retiring?
No.
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 So out of this, one of those positions is cut, or both of those positions?
Both of those positions.
Because, I mean...
With that in mind, Dave's not here tonight, but with that in mind, if you've been part of the conversation, Dave would, in the past, has estimated that every year we have a turnover district-wide of about 15 paraprofessionals every year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know Tier 3 is going to be even harder to discuss since we're already talking about actual 2 people potentially being laid off, 2 human beings with family and hopes and dreams and the life and all that stuff. I didn't want to walk out of here tonight not having that in my gut after I make the vote this evening of what I'm actually doing, what we're actually asking the superintendent to do. Again, this is why I asked for the consideration of the zeros from the admin team. Is this, are there no other supplies that we can pilfer for a year deeper than $152,000 before I have to start considering letting 2 paraprofessionals go?
So that was the question that we asked the principals, and this was as far as they could go to meet the needs of the building. You know, ultimately, we could if we go much less, we end up spending over in lines, and we end up in the same problem that we're in.
Well, I mean, that concern came up, and then you said 2 special ed support staff. And we've been hiring special ed support staff after we've had budgets, and we realized we have a need. Right? So the supplies people, I mean, we're talking the same thing. In Tier 3, we have another $408,000. 2.0 full-time equivalent middle school, 2.0 full-time equivalent high school, 2.0 full-time equivalent SELA support staff, 2.0 full-time equivalent support staff. I mean, this is 12 positions of people who work for us, or we've been trying to fill positions. I understand it's not exactly 12, but this is a handful of people, our people, that we'll talk about right now. But you heard them tonight. If we bring this budget, we're not going to get it approved by town meeting. We're not. And if we don't come up with a budget by July 1st, the state comes over and takes over our finances. And if we don't get one by December, the state comes over and takes over our district, period. End of statement. No more local control. I went to Southbridge on Tuesday night. Don't know if you know what Southbridge is. It's one of 3 school committees, school districts in Massachusetts that are in state receivership. It was the saddest thing I'd ever seen in my life. The state receiver doesn't even go to their meetings. Sets the budget, doesn't listen to they don't even vote their own minutes at their meetings. The impotence of that group, the absolute dejected hopelessness was palatable. Like, it was terrible. So, I think that we need to take all 3 tiers of these cuts, but I implore the building principals and central office to please, again, turn over every rock you can, find every penny, quarter, dollar you can to try and keep some of these people whole and not cut into the staff as deeply as this indicates here tonight. So I would make a motion to direct the superintendent.
I'm sorry, before you do, Jeannie, do you have a question?
I do. Since we're talking about cuts to the budget, and based on Dr. Henry's, I guess, not opinion, but I guess fact that we have a turnover within our paraprofessionals typically year to year, what are the implications of voting these decreases and then having to pay unemployment because someone does not turn over and has to take a layoff?
So there's always that risk. We have now until the end of the year. Some of the parents are actually getting their teaching degrees, so I don't expect them to be working as a para any longer. I would expect them to be moving on to being a teacher. So I mean, it may not be in Silver Lake, but it would be within Silver Lake School Regional District. So I don't anticipate them not having work if they want to work. There's some parents that have already applied over to the different schools, knowing that, you know, things are going to be shifting around. So this is just 2, and it's just Silver Lake, and it's just the middle school and the high school. There's more to come. And I'm not sure, did we put the school teacher in there?
No.
Yeah. I just asked to keep in mind because even though we're seeing, like, for instance, a reduction of $100,000, there's still a cost to cutting if there's a claim. So
there's always openings, and they did say there's like 15 turnarounds every year. Historically, that's what we're used to, so I think that if people want to do anything, they'll find it.
Thank you.
So my motion is on the floor.
Does this get it?
It's part of the plan. I can explain more if I get a second. We can continue discussion.
Okay, any further discussion on Jason's motion?
Jason has further discussion. Oh, we have to get the motion first.
He got a second.
Yeah, he got a second,
So the motion is now being entertained. We can have further discussion.
Jason, could you please repeat the motion?
Yes. To accept all 3 tiers as proposed by the superintendent, but to employ the superintendent and the administrative team to find alternatives to staff cuts to realize $855,000 in cut to the Silver Lake Regional School budget.
To try and find alternatives.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Scour the earth, please. Do you want my additional piece now?
Yes.
Do we not want to vote that?
No, he wants to know the whole plan.
Okay.
This is the post-second discussion.
All right, so the reason why I kept bringing us back to the $2.1 million in circuit breaker that the elementaries will be receiving in FY25 was because in FY26, we will own at least $1 million of that here at Silver Lake. So I'm going to propose something that would usually create a fiscal cliff. But it won't in this case if we consider it giving ourselves our own circuit breaker this year using our E&D funds in a one-time expenditure of $750,000 of E&D to offset the assessments to our member communities. This would bring the total cuts that we're making to the budget tonight, $1,605,000. And I would suggest we stop there and then see what the elementary committees do before we go any deeper. We should not bear the full burden of the increases being seen in the cost of education to the 3 towns at the lake alone. This should be equally shared by all 4 school committees.
And to be clear, doing that E&D movement, because it's not like we sit around with E&D money and do nothing with it, what would it normally be doing?
Well, E&D has been fully certified at just over $1.5 million. That is basically the fullest it can become. Those of us who've been on the committee for several years, we have been excellent stewards of the excess and deficiency fund for this exact purpose. Someday, there was going to come a major catastrophe, a major issue, and we would have it to draw from. We have drawn from it in the past. We've actually used it to save these 2 buildings. During the snowpocalypse, if you recall, we had ordered by the fire chief, the fire marshal of Massachusetts to shovel off the roofs of the buildings, or they would deny us occupancy. We went up there, we shoveled the roofs, we punctured holes in the membrane. We took our own roofs out of warranty by complying with the state order. We used an envelope study to assess the water infiltration of the building, and instead of paying $7.6 million to put 2 brand new roofs on these 2 buildings, we actually got them fixed to the point that we were recertified under the warranty for those roofs. Those are the kinds of things that we do. The capital plan has been funded exclusively out of E&D since 2015, 2016. We are not going to go as aggressive. The superintendent, before we even said anything, had already adjusted the excess and deficiency draw for the capital plan
to $204,000.
We brought it to the safety facilities fees and revenues, and we were extremely pleased because I think we were going to suggest that angle. This is a way to save jobs. This is a way to preserve the education for the students of Silver Lake to the best of our ability, and it is not going to create a fiscal cliff. We will just assume that money with circuit breaker in FY26. And that's smooth turn.
Amount again?
What's up?
What was the amount you said?
I want to take $750 from it. There's a multitude of reasons for that. Again, it's been certified at $1.5 million.
I just didn't
No,
catch the
but
number.
I want you to hear my plan too, because you're the numbers person, right? We're looking at taking about $204,000 for the capital plan. And there's also an overhanging project that we're trying to complete that we may need to foot about $400,000 worth of cost for before we get rebates on the project. So we need the 4 sitting in E&D. We're going to use the 2 for the capital plan, and we're going to use the $750 to offset the increases we're seeing in Silver Lake, so it doesn't hurt our classrooms. That's the idea. That's the other part of my planning work.
And you expressed that extremely well. Thank you for that. And having sat on a school committee for nearly 2 decades now, you never use money like that, one-time money, et cetera, to fund your operating agreement because you're left holding the bag and then some the following year. And as Jason indicated, we already know how that would then be filled, replaced next year. Understanding that reasoning, I would support that idea.
Save our schools. spend the money.
We're sticking our finger in the dike with a reasonable backup plan, with
Like I
with
indicated,
rationale.
There will be a small fiscal cliff at each of the 3 elementary committees next year when their circuit breaker comes over to us. Right? But I will wait to solve that problem at a later date.
Understood.
So my motion right now is to accept both cuts with the urgency of finding other resources other than staff members.
Additional staff members, come on.
I don't want any of these staff members. I want to find $855,000. I mean, that's what we've been praying for.
Yeah.
For 2 months now. I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah.
Praying for it, hoping, dreaming, wishing.
Yeah.
Right? We don't need to tell the superintendent of schools exactly where she needs to make these cuts. If she finds something that makes more sense, please feel free to make that change.
Right. Other than that,
So Jason, does your motion include this 750
No,
transfer?
I
Is
would
that
make
a
that as a
separate?
separate
Okay.
motion.
Yeah.
This was under the discussion, so Gordon could understand the whole plan.
yeah. Any further discussion, or are we ready to vote?
Jason, thank you for your attention to this and being able to explain it to all of us, especially like I'm new to Silver Lake Regional Committee. But I think your knowledge to this topic and all of this is extremely helpful to getting through this, so thank you.
Madam Chair, just to remind you, you need 11 votes for a budget vote, including cuts and proposals.
Right.
I'm only one vote, the rest of you get 2.
Is it 11
It is.
without Lucas here
It's
still?
11 of the
period.
full quorum, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So on the motion that is on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. That was easy math, Karen. All right.
It's still a horrible vote.
It is. This is a horrible year, but it could be worse if you hadn't come up with the idea of potentially dipping into E&D.
I also need to give credit to everyone else who sat at this table over the years that we haven't abused that fund. Okay, so I make a motion to use $750,000 from the excess and deficiency funds to offset the assessments for our member towns for fiscal year '25.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
So that was just, again, for the record, $1,605,000 that we just reduced Silver Lake's overall budget by. And I would implore us not to go any deeper until we know what the elementaries did. If we need to look at this number again and amend on the floor, so be it. I have a pathway in Plimpton to meeting my number after tonight's votes here at Silver Lake without going any deeper at Silver Lake. Halifax also has a pathway, though it is going to be much more difficult because they received $8,000 increase in their Chapter 70 funding. They are one of the minimal aid districts that you may have heard. Kingston, Plimpton, we are not the minimal aid districts, even if you may have been disappointed in your Chapter 70. If you want to see real strength, you need to look at our neighbors in Halifax and what they're dealing with. They have to make all of the cuts at the local level. There is no recourse for them at all. So we need to give them the room to see how far they can go, and then we may need to come back to the table. And I'm happy to work with the chairs of those committees if necessary to help guide their decision making.
Can I ask a question? Dr. Panarese, you mentioned earlier you'd like some flexibility within your role since you are the Director of Student Services for the entire district. How would we go about, I guess, giving you that authority without further complicating what we are unraveling and undoing from an improperly structured district?
So we have people that collaborate across the district. They help each other. And that's really the way it should be. If I have a really good CEO on my end, and you have an issue over, let's say, in Halifax, and you need that person to go take a look, I should be able to take that person and say, can you go take a look, put a set of eyes, get some interventions, help with some strategies, but I can't do that right now because that person's paid under Silver Lake, that person is paid under Kingston. So I can't utilize the expertise that we have inside our district to be able to support all of the schools. Because we all have gifts and talents, right? Some people are really good at this, and they can hop over to another district and help out there, like consultation or coaching. I would like that ability to do that, but right now I cannot do that. And I don't want to break you can.
Right. I guess that's my question is that even something that's feasible with our current structure of 4 separate?
No, but with full regionalization, it's more of a collaborative effort. Everybody's in, and everybody's supporting one another. And if there's expertise over in one area of the town, we can utilize it to help others.
If I may speak, I was surprised to learn that there was a BCBA in Kingston, paid for by Kingston, and we had to hire a BCBA from Silver Lake for the Silver Lake Integrated Preschool because it was 2 separate things, and the Kingston BCBA couldn't walk across the building because it was not part of their job.
Can I make one comment that I have in my notes, and it's sort of anecdotal to, and I don't mean that in a nonchalant sort of way. We've kind of found a path perhaps to our budget this evening, but one thing we did not address, and our auditors have told us to address it, is that our accounting department is understaffed. They've recognized it year after year. I'm just putting it out there because it was a recommendation from Lynch and Malini that we are unable to do anything with at this time. But I just want to acknowledge that we have a need, that we've kicked the can down the road. We can't address it this year, but we still have a need. Go ahead.
But we need to be careful because we made a mistake procedurally last year where we could have potentially added that capacity in the business office. When we realized we had some excess funds in Chapter 70 last year, we as the Silver Lake Regional School Committee said, oh, maybe we should add. Remember Jill saying, we needed maybe 1 or 2 bodies at least in the business office. And we said, oh, great, we can use some of our money here. And then we realized that the shared cost budget had already been voted, and almost everybody in that business office is a shared cost position. So just to make sure we have our ducks in a row and set up for FY26, I get where you're coming from.
I just want to...
We need to do that in shared costs.
Yeah, completely agreed. I just want to say
But we procedurally missed the vote last year. We could have had those positions potentially last year already. So you just need to be careful.
Right. But we would be struggling to fund them again.
We would.
Yeah.
We would.
Yeah.
Do you imagine what would have happened if we used that full increase in Chapter 70 last year and we held back and didn't? And gave the towns a little bit of breathing room?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. We're ignoring a recommendation, a repeated recommendation from our auditors.
To that point, Jason, I understand what you were just saying about if we had utilized all of those funds, but I think the whole purpose of when we're adding positions, we're hoping that it increases the efficiency of the district, and therefore, it can help us find money in other places, and I don't think we've been able to take advantage of that because we are so understaffed. I mean, we've made multiple requests of Sarah tonight. She's been on the job for 4 months and probably hasn't slept, in 3.5. So I think we need to be aware of the requests that we are making to our very limited staff as it is, so.
Agreed. Okay. Are we moving on to the capital plan?
Are we...
The bill schedule.
The bill schedule?
I skip that every single month. I don't like bills.
If we ignore them, they aren't real, right?
Office space. I think I'm gonna do that anymore.
Do you have a total of the
Are we on
warrants?
to the?
I don't have.
No,
No, we're on
okay.
the bill schedule.
All right, schedule of warrants. Do you
schedule.
have a total of what we signed for warrants?
It's number 8.
I had left a copy of it at your place. There's a piece of paper.
Oh, is this it?
It's
Okay.
printed horizontally and a bit larger than the microscopic in the past.
Okay, so, just want to make sure I'm getting the numbers right. We had a total of 20 vouchers totaling, there's two numbers here, there's
One
one
on the left.
$1,295,419.87. Total accounts payable from high school and middle school activities of $2,829,000, $2,829,883.84 for a grand total of $4,125,947.92.
So there's 20 warrants, I'm sorry, 20 vouchers, and then there's one for middle school and high school student activity, and there's 3 payroll vouchers. And I might have passed around some food service that nobody needs to sign.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I had everything in a big pile.
Who's the paper for?
Oh dear.
I got
That can mess it up really bad.
I came with that.
I got big clips, can we buy you some? I'll take them out.
I'll take about a
The big clips.
Yes, buy $855,000 worth.
Okay, capital plan.
Yeah. Safer Met and the administrator presented us pretty much what we were going to look at. A lot of it was based on the house doctor helping us save the money going forward. Some planning, but we also had to remove the admin building plans for that. And part of that is looking at some alternatives to constructing an admin building on site. So investigating and planning, running engineering, didn't make sense to do that yet. But we haven't forgotten about it for our staff. The proposal went down from some $700,000 to $204,000, which we'll propose to have come out of E&D at this point. Which will still leave us some money left over.
And because we didn't have the house doctor on hand, we have a couple projects that we need to put some effort into anyways. Didn't make sense to add to the list. Let's get done the jobs we already have in the pipeline. It all lined up perfectly.
We have some projects from that are in this year that have been funded by outside sources that we need to take advantage of, and the house doctor is going to get us to that point going forward. Once again, so 204 from the NDA. The vote we need tonight. Motion for a capital plan for the FY25 at 204 exactly.
Oh.
Somebody got it in front of them? Karen nicely made me a copy, but I lost it.
Is it the one that's online?
I have a copy of it somewhere. Yes, it should be the one that's online, but it is page...
Page 235?
I apologize for not having it out.
No. 391.50? I don't have the right copy. I'm not looking at the right thing.
391,500?
Was it?
391,500.
Is that with the vans in?
That's with the vans.
No, don't point to me.
Put the vans back in?
We need to talk about it with the committee. That's what we discussed.
Yep.
That's what we did. Go ahead, talk about it.
Can you talk about the implications of us not having these vans and why we put the vans into the capital plan?
Sure. Sarah had an audit done.
We had a transportation consultant come in and take a look at we had some questions about the vehicles that were purchased with grant money. And we're not sure that they were actually 7D compliant, and we don't have a transportation professional in the district. So we contracted with a transportation professional who came in to discuss not just the vehicles in the special ed department, but we walked around and looked at everything because I had questions about the plating of vehicles. We could have municipal plates, there's student plates, there's different types of plates, and I quite frankly don't know the difference in what goes on what. So I did a walkthrough, and in the part of the walkthrough where I was talking to the teacher in the Pathways program, she mentioned to me that the 2 vehicles that we have that are 7D compliant are not sufficient to transport the number of students with wheelchairs and walkers. And also, she's expecting additional students next year. And so in order to transport these students in 7D vehicles, which I believe is what our legal counsel has recommended, in order to transport them in 7D vehicles, we would need additional vehicles.
And was this primarily for the Pathways program, or was this across the board usage for students in wheelchairs and with special needs?
They would be used by the Pathways program during school hours, but the possibility to use them for home-to-school transportation, should we want to do that, would exist.
And Christine, could I ask you, for an in-district student that we drive to Silver Lake, and if we have a contract now, how much could that run us? It does not have to be an accurate, ballpark.
You have 2 things going on here.
Yep.
So the additional vans will be able to supply the transportation to and from. The Pathways students also receive specialized transportation first thing in the morning and last thing in the afternoon. I'm hoping that the procurement of these vans would eliminate that and save $142,000 off the Silver Lake budget. That's the first thing.
Right.
The second thing is that once those vans are used by the coaches and the people with the 7D licenses, they're off-site. So it's not like I can use those vans for our preschool students, which travel back and forth. The other thing that the only other thing that I would think of is that the more drivers we have, the more risk we have if somebody's out sick, and then who does that? So I'm fine with that. I like little buses.
And can you let the committee know, do we already have 7D licensed drivers on staff?
We do, yes.
Right. So you can see where there's potential savings here.
Exactly.
And can you explain the wait time currently for 7D vans in Massachusetts?
I believe it's a 1-year wait. Like if we ordered in July, we'd be lucky to get them during the year next year.
So listen, as I said, this would be an increase to the E&D number. Again, now we're taking it down to a sliver, but E&D does take in money over the course of the year. We don't have to pay the full price of the vans until we actually accept delivery.
Delivery, correct.
I am riding the razor's edge here tonight saying that I think that we should put those vans in. And if it proves itself as a program that works, we might want to expand this endeavor to provide more of our own transportation and have the drivers be our own employees to have more control. So I would encourage us to actually accept that higher number with the vans and the E&D number.
391.
Knowing that it won't be paid out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm playing the keep the checkbook balanced by knowing when the bills come due and when I get paid.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question just for, we did buy vans a couple of years ago, this is before you said it, so I apologize. Those vans are 7D vans, correct?
So there are currently 4 vans, we're on the second floor. There are currently 4 vans outside the door downstairs. 2 of the vans, is my understanding, belong to the high school.
Yeah.
They were referred to as Michaela's vans. Staff members that I spoke with.
Yeah.
And currently, the Pathways programs are using those vans.
Okay.
The 70 vehicles were purchased with, there were grant funds during COVID.
Right.
And the 240 grant for special ed and the 262 for preschool special ed are pretty standard.
Yeah.
But during COVID, there were, pick a bunch of numbers, the 254, the 270. And so those vans were purchased out of those COVID.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure we had 70 vans, because I know when we were buying them, that's what we talked about, that's what we ordered. I just want to make sure that's actually what we ended up getting. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, understood, thank you.
And just to cap that all off, when Sarah has capacity to work on this, Senator Markey has put out workshops that we can take as webinars that are from the American Rescue Plan, but also from the Inflation Reduction Act, that allow entities that don't pay federal taxes to get tax refunds for environmentally compliant projects. So we will start looking into pursuing some of the use of those grants. They're non-competitive. I mentioned this last time, non-competitive and unlimited in scope. We can go back to the wells many times as we want. So I will work with Sarah to make sure she gets those webinars and work with Senator Markey's office, and we'll try and realize some savings by using those grants instead of taking from them.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay? Also with the AC project that we're trying to put together, we're also going to lean into that as well for that project.
So with the vans included, the motion was for 391,000. Right, yeah.
And I will second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Is it 391,500? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's 391,500.
500,
Yeah, I will second the amended motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, folks. This has been a very informative but incredibly painful evening. And I commend the committee for its discretion, its decision-making. And again, Jason, the time and effort you put into this meeting and working through numbers and et cetera beforehand, thank you so much. You're invaluable. Invaluable.
Yeah, I'm honored to do it, and I'm honored to be part of the school committee that restores all of this cutting that we're doing, and make sure that I am here until we see that happen.
Glad to hear that. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. I'll second. No further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, folks.
Roll call.